In the weeks preceding Errol Spence against Terence Crawford, there was a noticeable hush for such a big fight. There was a real lack of hype. And I think in a proportional sense, that might be even more the case with the fight between Emanuel Navarrete and Oscar Valdez. It's coming up this next Saturday. It's for the WBO Super Featherweight title. It's an all-Mexican clash. We have got many reasons to believe this is going to be a beauty. But boy, who the hell is talking about this one? It was scheduled, wasn't it? And then Valdez suffered an injury. And so Navarrete ended up fighting Liam Wilson, which proved to be a little bit more tricky than I think it was supposed to be. But at the same time, it kind of underlined those real good qualities of Navarrete, how he can really take it and how he always pretty much comes roaring back. Now, there was a little bit of controversy about a bit of a long count. Navarrete, after getting floored in the fourth with a nice left hook by a guy who kind of almost matched him for... Well, he's a bit taller, isn't he, Liam Wilson? And not a bad reach on him. So just how those guys came together is going to be quite different than the much shorter Oscar Valdez. Nonetheless, he was able to plant a beauty of a left hook onto Navarrete. He kind of walked onto it, which just magnifies the impact. And then he was clopped with one on the side of the head as he went down. And yeah, there was some confusion. He spits out the mouthpiece. They took their sweet time to get it all back together, but of course he's just always listening to the referee. He's got to just use that as his guide. He gets himself back together. He starts piling back on the pressure as usual, and he ends up getting Wilson out of there. Now, it was the kind of performance that made you think, well, had it been Valdez in there instead of Wilson? But as I just said, there is a bit of a physical difference between those two. The trajectory of Valdez's left hook, which is his honey punch, is going to have to be quite a bit different to get up there and reach Navarrete, who always attacks you with broken rhythms, with confusing combinations. He seems to favour this one where he'll lunge in from seemingly out of range, club you with the right hand, and then ram an uppercut through the guard just directly after. It's almost a bit of a sneak punch. So the first one's just a bit of a decoy. But trying to gauge when he's going to do these funky things, it is obviously very hard to read. And I think in this fight, so long as he hasn't lost that daring to just attack when he feels like it, then that's going to serve him well. He doesn't want to become a bit stifled against Valdez. He wants to be his old usual self. He's very good at mixing in the punches. He goes to the body up and down very well. When he was closing out against Wilson, the way he changes and switches the attack, it's not necessarily pretty, but it's considered and very effective. And so I think Navarrete should give Valdez the kind of fight that I thought Miguel Berchelt was going to give him a couple of years ago now. I picked Berchelt for that one. I was pretty wrong there. But in retrospect, Berchelt was very weight drained. He was like sucking on oranges as soon as he got off the scales. He did not look well. And just the way he reacted to Valdez's punches, he was obviously weakened in there. Navarrete, it's crazy to think this guy defended the super bantamweight championship a number of times, right? He's quite a broad 5'7", but he's a guy who's got a 72-inch reach. Isn't that the same as Crawford up at welter? He's a very rangy individual, and he's not really defined either, is he? It looks like he's carrying a bit of weight, but I do think he is making 130 right now pretty well. There's no reason to believe why he shouldn't be firing on all cylinders. And so that means Valdez is going to be fighting a guy who's naturally bigger, taller, rangier, is 4 years younger, and is just going to be going for it for as long as his body and heart will allow. Now, yes, Valdez does have more experience, but after that nice shining moment against Berchelt, a lot of people felt he lost against that Robson, is it Conceição? I forget how to pronounce that one. Of course, he lost clearly against Shakur Stevenson, which necessarily isn't too much of a black mark because Stevenson is really shining right now. But how good is he? And I've always been of the opinion that Navarrete is a little bit better than what most people think. He was one of the few fighters to keep up a respectable level of activity during the pandemic. No, of course he wasn't fighting any world beaters, but he just kept the motor ticking over, kept putting in shifts, which is important because many fighters will always tell you there's a difference between staying in shape and that ring sharpness. I'd say Valdez looked okay in his last fight. That rematch with the awkward, sometimes taunting Adam Lopez got the fight pretty much by the scruff at the very end, but he wasn't finding it that easy to pin him down or dish out real damage. Valdez, despite what the Bushell fight showed, he's always been more of an attrition kind of guy. He wings away with the hooks for many, many rounds. And just really my gut feeling is that if Navarrete is 3/4 as good as I think he is, being naturally bigger, being younger, he should be able to take whatever Valdez dishes out, use his clever punch placement and volume to just make this into the hard kind of fight that Valdez can't get the better of right now, in which he's always going to be fighting against a stronger current. Now it's a distinct possibility that Valdez is going to come in with a super tight game plan. He's going to tuck up when he needs to, and he's going to be able to walk Navarrete onto him, who does lunge at times. He does it many times. Often it works. But he'll be able to draw him on, lurch over the smaller man, get him to drop his hands and just start pinging him with that left hook. Catching him not when he's quite ready, just like was the case with Liam Wilson. And if not stop him, then just carve out a bruising decision. But my gut feeling is that with the size advantage, with the youth advantage, and with that awkward flow of his, Navarrete is just going to force this into his kind of fight. I think he's going to turn heads for maybe the first time in his career, because there's a lot of naysayers. They don't like really what they see. And here's a guy who's been a world champion in different weights. He had a nice little reign as a super bantamweight champ. All little bits of work at the top level, none of it probably very celebrated. But this is the moment now to put your foot down and go, look, I've arrived. I was always pretty good. He needs to try and bash up Valdez. I think he can be cute enough in his own weird, awkward way to not just walk onto shots, to pick the moments and mug the smaller man when he needs to for, if not a late stoppage, a good bloody point battering. But what do you think of this one? Do you agree that it is definitely not getting enough attention? How much would we love it if it could be anywhere near as good as the likes of a Barrera Morales? You never know. Who are you picking in this one, and why?